Hello Internet, I am the hero of Julios once again with another video. This week's video is not really a chapter review so much as a look back at various chapters. So because there is no chapter this week for One Piece, I decided to instead think to the future. We got chapter 1000 coming, it's probably going to be early January, but I thought, why not look back at all the other 100 chapter milestones? Because One Piece has been going on for over 1,000 chapters. I mean, chapter 100 actually came out in 1999. That it's been a very long and very wild ride. So with everybody speculating about what chapter 1000 is going to be, is it going to be like a big fight, is it going to be the beginning of a fight, is someone going to die, like there's a lot of thoughts rushing through heads. So instead of trying to figure out what's going to be, let's take a look at what was. I actually took some notes on the various past chapters and just to think about what's happened in the past of One Piece, to just, I don't know, just to appreciate it. Honestly, I just really want to talk about these. So, without further ado, we're going to start with chapter 100, the first 100 chapter landmark. The chapter's title was The Legend Begins, and it came out August 9th, 1999. This 100 chapter mark, I would say, is probably the biggest theatrical performance of the 100 chapters. I'll get to the rest of them as we go, but this one was still in the early stages of One Piece, where getting to chapter 100 is still it's a big deal. It's a huge thing. Chapter 200, I mean, you've already made it to 100 once, and chapter 300, now you're an established series. Once you hit around that mark, you're either expected to, make it to 1,000, or you're just going to end on a normal mark. So chapter 100 did a great job of setting up not the world of One Piece, but the characters who inhabit it. So the chapter starts off with a speech from Gold Roger, a quote from him, and the first ever facial appearance of Dragon. Now, for those of you who are watching, I should have probably started the video with this, but I'm going to be talking about these chapters as a person who has read all the way up to chapter 997. So if you're thinking this is going to be spoiler free up to the chapters you've read, it's not. I'm going to be talking about the entire series. So I will pause a moment to let those people find a new video to watch and click off. Okay, now that those guys are gone. So Dragon's first appearance, and it's like the last time we hear about Dragon for forever. I mean, like, it is hundreds and hundreds of chapters before we see this guy again. And he's such an important character for someone who has appeared so little throughout the series. I mean, the only other time we see Dragon in this chapter is when he stops Smoker from capturing Luffy. And if Dragon had not been there, with the power of a Logia Devil Fruit, Smoker would have caught Luffy, and yeah, maybe the rest of the crew would have gotten away, but the only reason Zoro, Nami, Usopp, and Sanji were even a crew in the first place was Luffy. So, to not have Luffy, it just would have disbanded the Straw Hat Pirates right there before they even became notorious. So, if you really think about it, Dragon saved One Piece. Yeah, Dragon saved One Piece. But I'm getting ahead of myself there. So, after that, we see Smoker capturing Buggy and Alvida, and Tashigi, takes on Zoro for the very first time. And while Buggy does manage to get away, him and Alvida, because of the big windstorm and all that from Dragon, we we get a mention from Buggy saying, we're gonna chase after Luffy. We're gonna go to the Grand Line, and Buggy actually talks about the nostalgia of going to the Grand Line. Now, we didn't know why at the time, especially when you really think about Buggy, a 15 million berry bounty. He's just a normal pirate. Aside from, ooh, he's got a devil fruit. But once you meet Smoker, and eventually you're going to see Crocodile, and, characters like Doflamingo, Buggy doesn't seem all that impressive until much later in the series when we find out that he was truly, well, he himself was not truly, but he was a member of a truly great pirate crew. He was one of Gold Roger's cabin boys, alongside Shanks, one of the four emperors. And these little nuggets of mystery is what keeps people interested, because why does Buggy find the Grand Line nostalgic? Why would someone as mysterious and powerful as Dragon save Luffy, only for us to learn later that Dragon is Luffy's dad? Like, this is some intense stuff. So the chapter ends with the barrel ceremony, which is one of the more famous parts of One Piece, where the whole crew, they put their foot on a barrel and they declare what they're going to do when they get to the Grand Line. And then they sail off towards the lighthouse, towards Reverse Mountain, and towards the longest adventure I have ever read. I mean, I have read some pretty long manga, but I will definitely say One Piece is the longest thing that I have read and kept tabs on. When you think about it, it is actually pretty amazing how much happens between these 100-chapter milestones. When we last left off the Straw Hats in chapter 100, they were sailing towards the Grand Line. When we meet with them again, they are currently in the midst of a civil war trying to save Alabasta. Chapter 200 is Water Luffy. Now, this is kind of what I meant by, when you get to chapter 200, there's not a lot of pressure of doing something theatrical or spectacular or amazing, because chapter 200 literally is just the middle of a fight. Luffy has shown up, he saves Vivi the chapter before, and begins his battle against Crocodile for the second round. So, I should mention, in the chapter title, we see, the title box, and then underneath it is one of the earlier chapter cover stories. It's Hachan's Walk on the Sea Floor. It's the panel where he trades Kami for a map towards the secret sauce. That is a man who is lost in the sauce right there. And that's one thing I really love about One Piece, is the cover stories, where throughout the story, Oda doesn't forget about these previous characters. Little Buggy's big adventure, Kobe and Helmeppo's struggle, Django on Dance Paradise. Like, these are really cool little side stories that do tie into the main plot. We do see Buggy again when we get to Logtown. We do see Kobe again after the Enies Lobby incident. We do see Django and Full Body again after Alabasta. It's important to pay attention to those, and it's really cool to look back and see how far the story comes. Like this Hachan Walk on the Sea Floor, we don't hear anything about Hachi again until I think it's past chapter 500. Let me check my note right here. Yeah, chapter 480 or something, we run into Hachi again. Yet we hear about him all the way back in chapter 200. So I'm just really happy about how wonderfully the story all ties into itself in One Piece. And that's reflected here in the retrospect of looking back at it. So anyways, as I was saying, Water Luffy, it starts with the Straw Hats frantically searching for the bomb that Crocodile planted in Alubarna. They're looking around for it, and it's really, that's kind of all that happens in this particular chapter. it mostly focuses on Luffy's fight with Crocodile, where we see that Luffy actually can form strategy. Now, not to say that Luffy hasn't formed strategy in the past when it comes to fighting his opponents, but if you go with like the Mr. 3 fight, Luffy won on instinct. Against Captain Kuro, Luffy won just by sheer force. Don Krieg, Luffy beat him by just not giving up. Arlong, another sheer force. This was the first time where Luffy actually went into a fight with a plan. The plan was to soak himself in water to slam Crocodile as hard as he could, but the part about adding water to himself to guarantee hitting Crocodile, that's where you can see that Luffy does think about these fights. Even more so when Luffy chugs all of that water and becomes the real water Luffy, where it's, you know, big and fat and he's got like the springing leak in front of his belly because of Crocodile stabbing him from before. Even during that, Crocodile doesn't take him seriously. He says, you know, really, this is your strategy? You're going to just drink all the water so you don't lose the barrel? Doesn't take Luffy seriously, gets soaked, gets hit. So the chapter, the chapter ends with Luffy landing a solid hit on Crocodile, and that's it. That's really the chapter. And chapter 200 is treated just like another chapter, because not every 100th chapter should be a big theatrical performance. Otherwise, it becomes predictable. But it is nice when it is nice when the storyline lines up nicely with the chapter. For example, chapter 300, Symphony. It originally came out November 22nd, 2003. Ironically, September 22nd, 2001 is when chapter 200 came out. So 22 is kind of a special number here. But the cover art for chapter 300 is Ace finally getting some information about where Blackbeard is. This is nice because at this point we have met Blackbeard and we've met Ace. So we know that these two characters are coming to a head. And who could have predicted exactly what was going to happen there? You know, under normal circumstances, looking back, you know, with the information we had back then, we knew Ace was a strong pirate. We didn't really know anything about Blackbeard. And the prediction probably was going to be that Ace was going to catch him. We were going to see a cool fight, and then Ace was going to go home to Whitebeard. Who knew an entire arc and character development for Luffy was going to be a result of all this? But just that one little cover story reminds you of so much that happens in One Piece, because you just want to go up to Ace and say, "Don't do it, man. It's literally not worth your life." So anyways, the chapter starts off with the crew kind of reviewing the aftermath of Luffy's battle with Eneru. And the Skypians are starting to head towards Upper Yard because, you know, Eneru destroyed their home. So the only place left to live is the actual, like, solid earth that the Shindorians used to live on. So they're all going to have to either make peace or the Civil War is going to get really, really bad. The vassals have been defeated, and the people are trying to decide, you know, what to do with them. We eventually learn that they were going to be banished, and Gedatsu fell, and now he runs a spa on an island nearby Alabasta. Again, it's funny how things work out eventually. But the biggest thing that came from this chapter was we find out what Endless Farce is. The reason that Eneru is building a flying ship and the reason he wants to sail towards heaven is the moon. He wants to go to the moon. To the moon, though. I'm not even joking. You actually see it in a cover story later. He goes to the moon. To the moon. And to the moon. To the moon. And the moon has breathable air with little robot men that live there. And space pirates. There's space pirates in One Piece. Aliens are real in One Piece. This is one of those, like, it is so far off from everything else that's happening that you almost feel like it's a completely different story going on. And it kind of is, because it's, as far as we know, nothing has really brought Eneru back. We know he has an army now. But I'm not sure what he plans to do with it. And who knows? It may be a, well, because even Wapol comes back. Even Wapol came back. Wapol got a cover story series. Eneru might come. Eneru's going to come back. I don't know when, but Eneru's going to come back. And he's going to come back from the moon, which has breathable air, apparently. The moon. But anyways, so Wiper wakes up from his injuries left by Eneru. And the Elder shows him that for once, in hundreds of years, nobody wants to fight anymore. Between chapter 200 and chapter 300, we see Nico Robin join the crew. We see a boat fall from the sky. We see Luffy deck Bellamy in a single punch. We see Luffy take on a dude that thinks he's a god. All in 100 chapters. And it all lined up with a nice little pretty bow. Chapter 300, Nobody Wants to Fight. But sadly, not everyone doesn't want to fight. Chapter 400 is titled The Key to Freedom, and it was released on February 20th, 2006. The cover story for this chapter is part of the Baroque Works adventure that Miss Golden Week went on, where her plan was to find all the Baroque Works agents and free them, and I guess live happily ever after was her plan. But Crocodile and Mr. 1, 2, and 3 all end up going to Impel Down in the end. It's a sad ending for them, but honestly, I feel like it's a good ending for those who didn't go to Impel Down. But the specific page we see here is them finally being reunited. The entire Baroque Works from Mr. 5 upward is back together. The chapter itself, however, is not about a group getting back together, but rather a group and their struggle with reuniting. Luffy has just finished declaring war on the world government. Usopp has just finished burning down the flag. And Spandam is in a mad scramble to try and get Robin past those gates of justice as fast as he can. So, what does he do? He gives his top agents a series of keys to have amongst themselves. And these keys, one of them is a key to Robin's handcuffs. If the Straw Hats go after Robin first, they're just going to throw the keys into the ocean. Now, obviously, if this was a real life scenario, the logical thing to do would actually just be to throw the keys out now, or destroy the key that does the deed. But this is obviously shown in anime, which means you need to have actual tension, and you get those cool, games and stuff that real people wouldn't do, but in an anime world it makes sense. So Fukuro actually explains all these rules to the Straw Hats and then goes about his business. We actually get to see Funkfried in his sword form, which is the second devil fruit not a devil fruit that's eaten a sword that's eaten a devil fruit. The first one we saw was the gun that ate the dog fruit Dutch Hound model. So anyways, the Straw Hats go their separate directions. They all try to find their own key, and we get our first initial fights. We have, Frankie versus Fukuro, Usopp versus Jabra, Nami versus Kumadori, Zoro versus Kaku, and Sanji versus Califa. Now, it's actually really interesting to look back on this chapter in particular, specifically because of where we're at in the manga right now. Where we last left off with Sanji being captured by a beautiful woman, and he is alone with none of his allies around to assist him. And the very last panel we get is the beautiful woman asking Sanji a question, to which Sanji replies with, either like, oh my god, you're beautiful, or, oh, I'd love to spend the day with you, that kind of thing. So the last time this went down, Sanji got his butt handed to him by Califa because Sanji wouldn't attack her. It ended up in him switching places with Nami, and Nami eventually defeated Califa herself. The problem with Sanji fighting Black Maria is if this goes down the exact same way, a lot of fans are going to feel kind of gypped, and I'd be remiss to say that I wouldn't feel the same way. What I think is going to happen with Sanji versus Black Maria is Robin's going to be involved, and Sanji's chivalry is going to be truly put to the test. But of course, I'm getting way ahead of myself. That is 600 chapters ahead. But it's smart to think about these sort of things when looking back. We can try and predict how the Black Maria fight's going to go because of how things went before. We know Sanji will never kick a woman because of his interactions with Califa. And that is going to lead to some conflict that it's either going to result in Sanji finally kicking a woman, which sounds out of character when you say it right now, but if Sanji really had to choose between giving up his chivalry and letting like Nami or Robin die, would Sanji really pick that? Because is it really that chivalrous to let a woman die just because you can't hit a woman? It's a tough call that I would not want to find myself in. But Sanji may have to find himself in a similar situation. Or he may just get away and swap places with a different member of the crew. It could go any direction, but it's fun to predict these sort of things. So, on the note of Califa, she actually appears in the cover art for Chapter 500. The title of Chapter 500 is The Embers of History. And as we are going through the cover story of that series, Rob Lucci is in critical condition, and the members of CP9 are trying to raise money. Califa does her part by cleaning the city around her. It's interesting because it's a more human side of CP9 that we never see during their fights with the Straw Hats. We see Jabra and Kaku being a petting zoo, basically. Califa cleaning a city. They're doing just normal day jobs, for lack of a better word. They're doing a normal day job to raise money to help their friend in critical condition. The same friend who, I guarantee you, if the roles were reversed, Rob Lucci would not try to raise money to save one of their lives. His response would have probably been, "You're weak, you're going to die." But hey, you have to be the better person, despite whether or not your boss is a jerk. That being said, though, we haven't seen CP9 members outside of Rob Lucci and Kaku, and Spandam, if you really want to count him as a CP9 member. I wonder what the rest of them are doing. Is it like Baroque Works, where they, the main leader type characters went and became other things? Mr. 3 joined Buggy's crew. Mr. 2 is the queen of Impel Down level 5.5. Mr. 1 and Mr. 0, Crocodile, are currently in the New World doing God knows what. Is it like that with Baroque Works? Did Califa, say, wow, I really like cleaning roofs. I'm just going to do that, Maybe that is. Maybe they became friendly chimney sweeps. Maybe they opened a bakery. But whatever choice they made, they may not appear in the story again. We may just get a passing word from Rob Lucci saying, oh yeah, those guys, they they started a cleaning service, and they live on an island that I'm not going to tell you because I don't, maybe I owe them. I feel like I owe them. Maybe Rob Lucci gained a heart. You know, his last words to Spandam was, we're coming for you. And now he's like the leader of Cypher Pole Zero. Actually, is he the leader? I know Spandam works for Lucci, but is Lucci the leader of CP0? If someone is stronger than Lucci in a group that Lucci is in, I'm actually a little scared. But that would be really cool. Oh man, what if CP0 does end up fighting the Straw Hats, and instead of getting his rematch with Luffy, Luffy's like, no, you're not worth my time. Usopp, come over here, go beat up the kitty. I'm gonna go take on the real bad guy. Just Rob Lucci spends the entire fight angry, not because the Straw Hats are here, but because Luffy won't take him seriously anymore. That would be funny. But anyways, the chapter, The Embers of History, chapter 500, aired. It was released May 26th, 2008. It was during the Sabaody arc, and it started off with everyone was in a rush to try and save Kami. She had just been captured, and she was going to be sold off as a slave. We see the flying fish riders. That's a tongue twister. Flying fish riders. Hang on. Flying fish riders. Flying fish riders. Flying fish riders. Flying fish riders. Rosy life riders. See what I did there? They became they became the Rosy life riders because Sanji kicked Duval's face into being beautiful. As a thank you, the Rosy Life Riders decided to help the Straw Hats search for Kami. We later see Robin and Nami, they just get the news from Frankie, but a little before then, Robin explains to Nami the history of the fishmen, how the humans don't particularly like them. We learn this from Papagoo also telling Luffy about it, that fishmen are persecuted against. And this comes as a shock not only to, Nami, but us, the audience. Up until then, we're like Nami. We think, wow, the fishmen are really strong. They're really terrifying. They overpower an entire city and take it over. Arlong ruled Nami's island, and anytime the Marines came to do something about it, he sank their ships. Arlong wasn't to be messed with. And yet, we learn in chapter 500 that fishmen are actually the weak ones here. Like Robin says, you can't actually stop numbers. Now, because of this, mermaids are also persecuted. Mermaids and fishmen are considered fish by law, and therefore can be bought and sold like anything else with the right amount of oil. So we cut to inside of the slavery auction hall, where we saw, little intro boxes of the other supernovas, but this is the first time we get a full look at both Eustace Kid and Trafalgar Law. It's really cool to see the two of them back here because we see them again in Wano. They're actually both major players, but back then they were just unknown faces. I mean, Trafalgar Law, I think he got a few popularity points, but their popularity does not spike until way later in the series. But inside the auction hall, behind the curtain, we see, Kami, she's struggling. She doesn't want to be a slave. I mean, who does? This one slave, auctioneer tries to hurt her. He manages to get a couple hits in before just knocked out cold. We learn that the getting knocked out cold came from the haki of Silver's Rayleigh. And this chapter is the reveal of Silver's Rayleigh, the right hand of the Pirate King himself, and eventually Luffy's mentor in the ways of haki. Again, chapter 500, like the other, like other 100 mark chapters, isn't treated as a milestone for the series or anything, but it still had a notable event happen within it. The chapter where Rayleaf makes his very first appearance. So when it comes to the jump between the 100-mark chapters, Chapter 600 and Chapter 500 happen on the exact same island. They both happen on the Sabaody archipelago. In my opinion, this is the wildest gap between 100 marks of the whole series, because in the span between 500 and 600, we have the Straw Hats separated. Luffy goes to Amazon Lily. Luffy learns about Ace, getting captured. Luffy goes through the entirety of Impel Down. Then Luffy fights in a war. Then we get the backstory of Luffy, Ace, and Sabo. And then we get to see the Straw Hats reunite, all over the course of 100 chapters. It feels like the heaviest set of chapters, and yet we are experiencing it all so quickly, especially people who are just now getting into the series. This is, October 18th, 2010 is when Chapter 600, Island of New Beginnings, was released. This is also one of the only 100-mark chapters that doesn't involve a cover story. We actually get a fan request of Zoro mistaking a crocodile for his barbells. But the story, the chapter itself, it's only 2 chapters after the time skip ended, which, again, is another reason why I really like One Piece, is Oda didn't, stretch out 2 more chapters and then make Chapter 600, the Straw Hats are back, and, the 2 years later. No. Chapter 598, 2 years later. So, that way, I know that Chapter 600, it wasn't like the story was planned to fit a specific, 100 here, 100 here, 100 here. It was just, it just happens to be Chapter 600. So the chapter starts with Chopper, and he's been running away from the fake Luffy and all that after finding out that you don't really care about your friends anymore. I can't believe I trained for 2 years, and he runs away, and Usopp and Nami find him. And we finally get to see Chopper's new walking point, because he's 2 years older. He's much bigger now. And this raised a lot of people's hopes and stuff. They're like, oh my gosh, not only is Chopper's, his brain point is new, but his walking point is new. Oh my gosh, what does the rest of his stuff look like? And, we see it during Fishman Island, his heavy point. But it's really cool because, we get to see all the Straw Hats' new looks, and we actually see a few more of them. We also see a few more of the fake Straw Hats. We see the fake Straw Hats' new recruits, including Caribou and his brother Koroboo. I forgot how crazy and sadistic Caribou was. The whole, oh, spare these Marines, they know not what they do, and then stabs the guy to death. So we carry on from that craziness to Brook and his final concert, where he announces to the world, because he knows the crew's back together, he knows everybody's ready, he announces to the crew that Straw Hat Luffy is not dead. And I am going to go with him. And, you'll see the Flying Fish Raiders, they'll show up, and all the Straw Hats, Brook will hop on, and the birds will show up to help the Luffy and Zoro and all that, and the crew will get back together, and the ship is coated, and they're ready to go. So just like chapter, 100, where the Straw Hats were ready to go to the Grand Line, chapter 600, the Straw Hats are ready to go to the New World. I mean, there's a couple more chapters in the Return to Sabaody arc, but the chapter 600 shows that the boat's at least ready. On the note of crazy things that happened from then to now, the Straw Hats go from, Sabaody, reunited, feel so good. They sail all the way down to Fishman Island. They sail all the way back up and end up on Punk Hazard. They form a deal with Trafficker Law. They capture Caesar. And now we are at chapter 700, his momentum. The The chapter cover story is Caribou once again, and he has wandered into a town where apparently he's a wanted man. We'll later learn that Caribou just happens to look like the leader of a rebellion, and he ends up getting captured by Kaido's forces, and once again, cover story coming into the main plot where we see that Kaido put Caribou in the exact same prison that he puts Luffy in, and Caribou actually becomes an important part of smuggling weapons and people into the battle against Kaido. Actually, on that note, where is Caribou right now? I'm getting off subject. So, Chapter 700 begins with news traveling the world that Doflamingo has quit the Seven Warlords of the Sea. Now, this comes as a shock to not only his arms dealers, but various pirates who are onlookers of the world. But that's not the only piece of news that really gets the attention of these people. More specifically, Jewelry Bonnie and Eustace Kid both make comments about how Luffy and Law have teamed up. Kid even going as far as predicting what their goal is, to take on one of the four emperors. At this time, Kid is on a fast track to try and fight Shanks, which ends up going really south for him really fast, and we'll see why much later in the series. But a promise is a promise, and Doflamingo calls the Straw Hats on, their transponder snail, and Law proves that Caesar is alive, and Law makes his demands, meet me here, we'll drop off Caesar, we'll go our separate ways. You quit the warlords, that's what's important. This turns out to be a ruse. Law is actually going to have a different plan where, while he is distracting Doflamingo with the trade, Frankie, Luffy, Usopp, they're going to go wreck the factory that makes the Smile Fruit. At this point, we just know that Smile is something that Doflamingo makes and it's bad. Now that we know exactly how bad Smile Fruits are, I am very glad that this plan went successfully. Because Smile Fruits are terrible. Don't do Smile, kids. Don't do Smiles. But, as the chapter goes on, we see that Kinemon tells the Straw Hats about Kanjuro, who, when you know what you know now, Kanjuro doesn't seem like a noble sacrifice who helped Momonosuke get away. No, Kanjuro is just playing his part, because Kanjuro is a dirty, disgusting, horrible Lost the Happy, but the Happy's back. And speaking of Happy, we learn that Buggy the Clown is one of the Seven Warlords of the Sea. Now, Doflamingo had just revoked his status, and the actions of Trafficker Law are going to get his statuses revoked. And we're starting to see why the warlord system will eventually be revoked later in the series, because ever since the actions of Luffy disrupting Crocodile, it seems like warlords are just going down left and right. Honestly, if they just avoided Straw Hat Luffy, they'd be fine, but there's also one unmentioned member of the warlords. We eventually learn that it's Edward Weevil, who is the supposed son of Whitebeard. Now, the problem with that is nobody's really elaborated on that. We know that Weevil is as strong as Whitebeard was back in his prime, but we don't know anything else. And until we do, this isn't really that big of an impact, at least looking back. But we also find out from Navy headquarters that Fujitora is on the case. He's going to be heading towards Dressrosa, and he's going to take a look at Luffy and Law and, I guess, take care of them, especially after Smoker's complaints because of the actions of them on Punk Hazard. But the biggest part of Chapter 700, and once again, another normal chapter, but there's still something hugely notable about it, is the reveal of Doflamingo having Ace's Devil Fruit. Not the power of it, the literal physical fruit in his hand. It's going to be a prize at the Coliseum, and it's the bait to lure Straw Hat Luffy. Again, warlords would do so much better if they just didn't get in Luffy's way. Because we'll see much later that this does bite him in the butt. So, remember how I said that was March 4th, 2013? 100 chapters later, September 19th, 2015, we're still in the Dressrosa arc. This is the first arc that spans over 100 chapters. It is massive at how huge this chapter arc is, or how huge the number of chapters in this arc is. Chapter 800 is titled Sun's Cups. Doflamingo has been defeated, and Luffy has refused the offer of becoming the leader of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet. So the cover art for this chapter is Robin dressed as Snow White. There are 7 goats, and they're keeping Sanji at bay because Sanji's trying to be the prince that kisses her and wakes her up. It's another fan-requested artwork, and I find it pretty cute, but it's not really anything, significant to the main storyline. Going back to what I was saying, Luffy refuses the cups from earlier that all the other captains of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet want to, they want to share father and son's cups, and Luffy says, no. Because if I really do think we're in trouble, I will shout to you guys for help. And if you think you're in trouble, shout to me. We're friends. We're gonna help each other. Luffy's goal isn't to be, the king of some grand fleet. He wants to be the king of the pirates because to Luffy, the king of the pirates is the man who is most free. Not some grand man who sits on a throne and rules over the people with an iron fist. Luffy doesn't want to be that. Luffy just wants to be happy. That's all Luffy wants. Now, because of this, the sons, inspired by his words, say, well, if you're free to do whatever you want, then we're free to do whatever we want too. So they drink the cups anyways and swear their loyalty to Luffy, much to his chagrin. And we haven't really seen those guys since the end of this chapter. Speculation is that maybe during Wano, those guys will show up, because when Luffy got one shot by Kaido, they may have seen his Vivera card get weaker. They may have panicked and started heading towards him wherever he was. Granted, with Onigashima's current, they may have a hard time actually getting to him. But maybe 1 or 2 guys could get up there, because if Orlumbus, picks up Bartolomeo, and Bartolomeo makes a barrier to make like a little bubble, and all the other captains get in that bubble with him, Orlumbus could shot put him all the way up to Onigashima, and then he could be a part of the fight with all of them. Just a theory, of course. So, the other side of the coin here is we see, meanwhile, at Fujitora, he's got that, that big scrap cloud floating above them. And as a thank you gift to Luffy, instead of dropping it on Luffy himself, drops it on all the enemy pirates that were going to attack Luffy for taking out Doflamingo. Unfortunately for him, Sengoku hears him do that, and eventually it leads to Fujitora not being allowed to set foot on government facilities until he captures Luffy. We're definitely going to see Fujitora again, so I'm interested to see where that's going to go. The ending of this chapter is Luffy and all the captains of the Grand Fleet and Zoro, they're all getting together and they're having a huge party. And once again, a chapter ends on a heartwarming note. Chapter 800, I wouldn't exactly call it the ending of the Dressrosa arc, because there is a few more chapters afterwards. But as far as 100 chapter marks go, this is a very heartwarming and nice place to end. However, not every chapter has a happy ending to it. The latest of the 100 chapter marks is near the ending of the Whole Cake Island arc. The title of this chapter is Bad End Musical. Chapter 900 was released April 2nd, 2018. A little more than 2 years ago right now. Which, when you really think about it, Wano has been going on for quite some time. It may actually become a longer arc than Dressrosa. So, this is the... So this 100 chapter mark actually only features a cover art. It's a big color spread. It's really cute, but it's, nothing to stare at. What you're really focused on is the results of Sanji's cake. The chapter starts off with Big Mom just horking down that cake like a mad woman, keeling over at how, delicious and wonderful it is. She literally says the cake is to die for. And as she dives back into it, she doesn't go crazy, like with her hunger pains, but she does start to hallucinate because she is so happy from this cake. She even starts singing a song that will take us through the rest of this chapter, all the way to the end. We also get a little clip of the people saying, oh my gosh, it's so good. It's so safe. The cake, it stopped her. Pudding did it. Pudding saved the day. And Pudding is sitting there alone, lamenting about, what actually happened. But aside from Pudding, the rest of the Big Mom pirates are still doing their jobs. They are still hunting after the Straw Hats. They're still charging forward. Oven boils the ocean. The dectuplets, I believe it's called dectuplets. The dectuplets are duking it out with the Germa 66, which we haven't confirmed or denied whether or not Germa 66 is fine. We don't know what Big Mom did to them. So it's interesting. But the cake itself takes Big Mom back to that 6th birthday. Back to the happiest she has been in her entire life. And as she is singing, as she is hallucinating, we see the Straw Hats taking one final stand against the Queen Mama Shanter. There is an explosion. And the chapter just ends on the Straw Hat flag fluttering on the ocean. A lot of people had their theories, their speculations. I was finally starting to follow people on YouTube about this at the time, so I was starting to see how people were responding. For those of you who are wondering, chapter 600 was the first 100 mark chapter that I was reading week to week. I started reading One Piece a little before Luffy's backstory. So a couple chapters, it's like 10 or so chapters after Ace died is when I finally caught up to the manga and was starting to read it week by week. But this was the first early times where I was actually starting to follow other One Piece YouTubers and their opinions and their thoughts and their theories, and it was interesting to see the crew react to this because the title, Bad End Musical, a lot of people were making theories of maybe chapter 901 is good end musical and we see what really happened. And turns out, no, that's actually what happened. Mama was not hallucinating a victory. Those things really did happen. Now, obviously we know what really happened to the Thousand Sunny and what happened with the Fishman, and we know what happened to Jimbei. We don't know what happened to the rest of his crew after the events of Whole Cake Island. But this was the last chapter, the last 100 mark chapter until 3 chapters from now when we finally get to chapter 1000. Anything could happen. It's anyone's game. Obviously, it's not going to be a mundane chapter. So it's not going to be like Water Luffy or, the Keys, where it's just setting up or it's just continuing. I feel like this chapter is going to be like chapter 100, where it's going to be grandiose, it's going to be huge, and it is going to be worth talking about. So I know at this time I'm just a small channel, and I'm very, very grateful to the people who have subscribed since I started doing this. I know I don't talk about it a lot at the end of my videos, the whole, oh, like, comment, and subscribe, but it makes me feel good when people, when people do subscribe, when people do like, when people give me their opinions in the comments. The first time I got a dislike on one of my videos, my immediate thought was, oh my gosh, I made someone feel something. Like I made someone disagree with me, and then they clicked on the dislike button. They didn't like leave a comment or anything saying why, but I actually had, people with opinions. I have comments. I actually had a comment a few chapter reviews ago telling me about something I missed, and I'm glad that's happening. And that's what I love about the One Piece community, is that we can all get together. We can all think about these chapters. We can look back and form, conclusions and theories based on what we know. That's why I wanted to talk about these chapters, was so I could really sit down, look at the milestones of One Piece and say, hey, if this happened, then this could happen, but this already happened, so it probably won't happen again. Blackbeard ate 2 devil fruits. We don't know if someone's going to do that again. We doubt it's going to happen again, because we have it confirmed that Blackbeard has a weird body, but for all we know, Kaido ate 16 devil fruits, and that's why he can't die. It's things like that. And making this video was really fun. It was enjoyable. I liked reading each of the chapters again and seeing the things that happened throughout it. I mean, look at the glow up between old Luffy and new Luffy. Like, even in the art style of One Piece itself, there has been change and growth. And there's been change and growth in people who've watched it. So, with chapter 1000 coming, I'm looking forward to seeing where this story is going to continue going, and I hope you guys are looking forward to it too. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video. This is the Hero of Julios, Xing out.